Hi there, everyone. Sorry, this is a belated live stream. I'm not going to do a full one. I got home. I finally got home. I was supposed to be home about an hour ago, but no. I've been traveling. We finally got back to Warsaw. Yay. Yesterday was an unmitigated snafu because the internet was not working. It was working, but I can do stupid stuff like post something on Twitter or put a post on Facebook. But I tried doing a live stream. Google was saying, "Oh, sorry, your signal strength isn't strong enough. Sorry, your signal strength isn't strong enough." So I just couldn't do it. I tried 2 or 3 times. I gave up after 30 minutes. I kind of sent messages to people what happened, and I felt bad about it. But I was going to be traveling today, so when I get back to Warsaw, headquarters, secret underground headquarters of Bates Inc. We're doing. So I said I'd post something. So this is a belated Friday afternoon. Hi there. It's not going to be a long thing. I just wanted to say sorry. I apologize. I didn't get any instructions if people wanted to say anything. I noticed that I don't know. My subscription. It looks like people. I thought I was getting close to a certain number, and then all of a sudden it looks like, oh my God, a lot less. The analytics were throwing me off. I'm saying I was looking at the dashboard. I thought I was getting near 400, but now it's I say, what happened? I lost a lot of people. It still says I got new subscribers, but it's 345. It's like, whoa, what's going on? Something's going on. I remember being higher than that a couple of days ago, so I have to go check my things. So subscriptions, some old people, some people going to post some notes on my Thucydides thing, my Thucydides thing, but that's it. We have it, so I said I'd do it. My friend Matthew, I don't know, I told you last my friend Matthew came. He brought the book, a copy from Glenn. I was actually talking to Glenn earlier today. Because we had our reading with our book club. We do reading Thomas More's Utopia. Finished it, and he was there. He had to go to the thing, and I get a chance to say thank him for his copy. His joking copy. I kind of talked about this to people last time. I got a book, a new book. What's his name? Gustav Le Bon's book, The Crowd, which I had years ago. I read a long time ago, 1980s, and I remember 1990s. I even have maybe the Liberty Fund volume of Le Bon's work, which might include The Crowd. Someone has reported to me that I need to read The Crowd again. A couple of people on YouTube saying, "No, you should look at this. Look at Le Bon." And I looked at Le Bon. I remember Le Bon. This is something I remember. This is again, this is a French author talking about again, turn of the 20th century, looking at mass society, and that's a good question. The question of mass society. So I've been looking at that. I've been also, like I said, this week was a complete disaster. Anyone who knows Polish politics is a mess because the current government it still got the most votes, but it didn't get enough to form a government, and all the other governments ran against. All the other parties ran against it. They collaborated with each other to successfully, and they made deals with each other, and they worked a certain way, and they ultimately got in power. They probably won't be able to form a government. They have 30. The current government has. The majority party, the party that won the most votes, gets to make a government. Now, it's not going to happen. They're not going to be able to form a government because the other parties have secretly made it, all but Confederacja. Confederacja didn't get enough. The biggest shock was Confederacja did worse than expected. And that is the interesting thing, that Confederacja, something happened. I think in many ways, PIS sabotaged themselves. PIS, by really going super hard on the Ukrainians the way they did, fearing that really may have not done that, ran more to the middle on policies and let Confederacja run to the right, and therefore form a coalition. But the problem with this is they did not want to concede the right to Confederacja and all that, and a lot of the problems that come with Confederacja, particularly its anti-Semitism and its ties to Russia. And Russian, interests. So, I understand why PIS was not willing to let Confederacja gain in power. They really objected to Confederacja. But the problem is that none of the so-called peasant party isn't peasant party. It's a klepto party. And that therefore there was no kind of mediating ground that could be a coalition. I know people who wanted to have a PSL coalition, but PSL got in bed with some of the PO renegades like Petru and guys and the Green Party. And therefore it's kind of a sick, perverted situation of trade unionists with social liberals, okay, who kind of, which should have been, the social liberals should be in the coalition or in the left party. They're not in the left party because they're neoliberals. They're neoliberals, but who are not socialists, but they are still socially progressive. So therefore, that's why it's odd that PSL is with them in that sense, and trade unions. But again, that mostly the idea was that this is the old trade unions that were kind of anti-solidarity. They were tied to solidarity, but not necessarily socially conservative in that sense. So therefore, you have, and also tied to the Catholic social conservatism in that sense. So therefore, you have that other group in that situation. So it's a mess. So right now we're going to, in fact, remember the coalition is not, PO took the lead of the so-called coalition citizen coalition, which is basically 8 to 9 parties, including PO. So that, it's kind of like a broad coalition of parties with, liberal, neoliberal, pro-business, neoliberal parties, and tied to that. And but they have I think some radical left parties were in them, because what defines the KO is their hostility to PIS's attempt to change the legal system or reform the legal system in that sense. And the idea of calling PIS an anti-European party, which is not. Confederacja is the anti-European party. PO is just it's a pro-European, but not pro-German. In other words, not pro-Brussels. It wants European Union without that. So therefore, in many ways, PO is basically a wannabe German. It's German proxies. That's what they are. They're just the big private, wealthy, private concerns, international businesses, big deals, and things like this, and they're basically pro-European, pro-German. And if German tells to sell your souls to Russia, they did that when the PO was in government. It made business deals with Russia, oil, made Poland dependent upon Russian energy. And what's so interesting, therefore, it's so funny to see the PO campaign against PIS as being pro-Russian. And there's a whole argument what happened with Ukraine. What Ukraine did was stupid. Ukraine, listening to the Germans, pressured the Poles. A demand that Europe opens up European markets to Ukrainian grain. If that happens, that would destroy all of Poland, Czech, Hungary, Slovakia, and Czech, and maybe even Romanian farms, agriculture. It will destroy it. It will just cheap Ukrainian grain would have flooded the European market and wiped out and impoverished and destroyed the whole sector. That would be political suicide for PIS. So therefore, that's why they had to turn against the Ukrainians, who they were the biggest champions of. The PIS. This is there's a saying. And that's why Duda's line about Ukraine being a drowning man, and therefore drowning men are just as much dangerous to the people rescuing them. Because, in fact, PIS government was the best friend that Ukraine had, and Ukraine taking the lie from Germany that suggests, we'd help you into the EU market. Just demand this. Just advocate and defend, push the other Europeans to. Got Zelensky to push the issue of grain, and doing so poisoned the well of support in this, because basically that was a suicide gesture. It was and the Germans say, well, we'll give you missiles. And then what happens after he does that, Zelensky doesn't get any missiles. So Germans fucked them again. Typical German thing, I promise you. And I think this is the thing that's going to happen to this new Tusk government. That in about 30 days, they'll get their chance to form a government. They'll form a government by the biggest, mess about how to get everyone to agree with each other, how they're going to do it. It's going to be a miracle to form a government of all these coalitions and that things. So what's going to end up happening is you're going to have a government that is barely able to agree on anything except that they hate piss. And the idea that the European Union is going to give them a lot of money because the belief is, well, only if we get rid of this PIS government, then Europe will start sending the money they've been withholding. I don't think the Germans are in a giving mood. I don't think the Germans are in any aspect of a giving mood, particularly with the recent revelation of the German government trying to make a deal with England to get access to the English market and promising them a new deal, the independent deal of the EU, working against the other European nations. Germany is in economic crisis and is going to be a big problem. So therefore, the idea that Germany is going to allow because that money that was set aside and held and reserved for the EU has been spent already by other things. So all that money that was been held for at least 5 or 6 years, including most of COVID relief that Poland didn't get, and very little of the money for the housing the refugees the Polish government didn't get because it was held aside because of rule of law concerns. Right, this is the penalty that the EU did on this. And the promise is that, well, we get our money back and we'll get more once we get a government that is not anti-European. So I don't think this is going to happen. I think that Donald Tusk, and I think I have a joke about Donald. I think in 90 days, next March and April, the discussion by March and April, there'll be no European new money. The government will be in chaos, and I think the rallying, and they will undo the nuclear deal, the nuclear plants. They'll try to undo the defense agreements, and they'll follow what Biden did, which once he came in, undid everything Trump did. The first year in office, everything Trump did, he did against. PO and the coalition coming in will try to blow up everything PIS did. They're going to shut down IPN. They're going to close the Institute of National Memory and things like this. They're going to close out the anti-corruption bodies. They're going to shut down. They would like to get rid of the social money programs, but they do that. That's when their coalition, probably many members, even within the coalition things, promised citizens that they wouldn't do that. Okay. That was the lie they told. I don't believe them. The whole attitude of that party and their elites is the hatred of common people getting any money. So I think this is going to be a shit show for the next 2 years because of the inability of the government to do something. So that's why I was kind of, everyone's been depressed about this. People I know, they're going to be shutting down institutions. Everyone's afraid that they're going to back out of the buildup of the fence. They're going to probably, they'll probably even sabotage the deal with the Koreans, which means the loss of hundreds of thousands of jobs. They basically, PO and that neoliberal crowd want Polish workers to be slave labor in Germany. Okay, that's what they want. We have to remember the world of 10 years ago when Poles had to go into young Poles had to really go to Europe and England for labor jobs because they couldn't get any, and they're getting a job in Poland meant low wages. So what PIS did was build up Polish wages greatly, by two ways: one through social help and social things of family money, so therefore allow families to money for their children and have children. That didn't always produce the large build-up children, but what it did was it allowed the middle class middle class housewives and people like that not having to take low-level jobs just to survive and pay for things like children and childcare. And therefore, what that did was that rose the prices of labor. Okay, by that social money allowed people to hire nannies, hire babysitting to do things. Again, but that's socialism. No, I hate to say it. Anyone who knows Milton Friedman liked direct payments. The 500 plus and now 800 plus is direct payments. So all of my libertarian friends saying, "Oh, that's a socialism, welfare." So no, it was the kind of welfare policy that even Milton Friedman thought and Hayek thought was a good idea. Why? You tend the money to the people themselves, not to create government agencies that will then have higher bureaucrats. So the 500 plus and these things were good policy in that it basically allowed the lower middle class to kind of grow up. It allowed for entrepreneurship, small, middle-sized businesses, while at the same time policing the thing. So, I mean, you look at what this does is that I think there's going to be an undoing of the tax police and a tax authority to return tax policy back to pre-PIS government, which was, before the PIS government of about 8 years ago, tax non-compliance and VAT cheating was extremely high. It was the first PIS government giving the informer package, which gave informers incentives to report people who didn't pay taxes, automatically changed within a year. Instead of having net revenue declines, which everyone thought would happen in the first PIS government, we had net income increases because people who were not complying with taxes were complying with taxes. So, I mean, most people have short memories, particularly young. They don't remember that in the last PIS, the last time PO was in government, it arrested journalists. PIS never arrested journal, but PO government did. The PO that they were caught on tape, and that the fact that they were caught on tape plotting to break laws, and then the sending the police and the prosecutors against the reporters who had the tapes. The tapes had to be flown out of the country to make sure, because they wiretapped, some private actor wiretapped a restaurant that the PO types were going to, and there was this people forget about the scandal of Sikorsky on tape and Rakowski on tape, and all the tapes where these big PO leadership caught on, basically making deals for the interest of private individuals and friends at the expense of the public service, public interest. So you had, that's why the fall of Sikorsky. So, this is, and Tusk was already in Europe at this time when it was happening, and his woman prime minister, who basically fell everything apart, and the rise in the eventually victory of PIS. Okay, now this is something we have to understand in that sense. You have to understand the history of events. Well, I've been ranting about this for about 17, 18 minutes. So that was political reality for like weeks. So there has been like politics. And my friend will tell me, one friend says, one friend's worried because he's going to lose his job because he has an additional job at a think tank that was created by the prime minister. And that once the new government gets in power, they're going to shut the think tank down. We're going to shut it down because they're going to, of course, do this. And the other friend is saying, my God, what the coalition is going to do is they're going to the neoliberal kleptocrats will only care about economy. Therefore, the neoliberals and the people like that will take control of all the ministries that are important for economics and security, but then give to the left-wing quack jobs all the higher education, culture, and things like this, basically condemning, LBGT madness and gender stuff will become the norm in universities in Poland. So we'll have a woke crisis, I think, my friend said. He says it'll be like you'll have that for many times Poland has restrained away from complete madness and those things. It's there, it's present particularly among the university elites. Now what will happen is this will go overdrive. We'll see that these people will get put in positions of ministerial responsibility, and therefore these agendas will be put. And the neoliberals, the economic neoliberals, as long as it's not affecting my corruption and my money to make big money in Europe and make me getting good jobs in European foundations and things, won't care. Okay, so therefore this is why I think this is going to be. And I predict that this will, the backlash against what will happen in 4 years, the incompetency, not only maybe PIS will come in power, but I think maybe further right-wing groups will grow in Poland. I think by the end of the we will probably get the social justice nonsense will become so dominant in culture and be imposed. The reaction to it in Polish society. I mean, this is one of my colleagues who wrote a book about Finland. Oh, PIS government was anti-gender. You haven't seen anti-gender yet. Once these forces get more power, yes, PIS was hostile to these things, and they were saying, "Oh, yeah, this is just a far right, new right conspiracy against gender. They're just using gender as a boogie person, and this is just this is what happens when these guys get in charge of ministries and things, and they start making social policy, and then all of a sudden you have social policy done by these people. Ooh, then you'll see the backlash." And it will be far worse than I think these people imagine. And God help them; they'll deserve it. They'll deserve it. They demonize the moderate part. They demonize what is basically a social democratic. I mean, not social democrat, but a Christian democratic party, a Christian economically social democratic, but socially conservative. In other words, economically social democrat, socially conservative party. Okay, so you have this government. They turned this into a Nazi party, and I think this is silly. Was always silly about this, and the people who argue this. Oh yeah, of course they did so because their own personal, usually their own sexual identity, all their politics was their own personal choices. And therefore for them the personal was the political. And therefore could not get beyond the fact that their lifestyle and their way of life was only reflected less than 1% of the society. And of course, you had people who sympathized. Maybe 20% of the elites would sympathize for that, and the rest, a good portion of the population, didn't want to see to be bullies. So therefore, they're going to be play this, but not a majority. The majority they never favored these lifestyle choices and these things. So, and therefore, once these people get in power and start using their power and rubbing people, and what they'll do is they'll rub people's noses in it. That's their way. And what will happen is the backlash towards it. And the backlash is going to be big. And I think the incompetence, the opposition, now the PIS opposition is going to be unified, not disunified. And the government is going to be completely chaos. So you'll have a government that'll be very difficult to get enough to people to actually get voting coalitions to be able to pass legislation, that they can agree on legislation. In other words, the legislation would have to be so broad and so big so that every interest could get its way for it to be able to get passed and do this. And it only requires, in such a situation, such legislation will be disastrous in that sense. And it'll actually be more economically destructive than whatever the PO argued about the PIS government's policies. So it's going to be an interesting 4 years because we'll see the chickens coming home to roost. So that was why I was away in that sense. After my Tuesday, we went away. I had to go visit some places. I wanted to go visit some places, and I visited some places to see how this effect was in southern Poland, and to check some things out. It's depressing because everyone was saying they couldn't believe what happened. I believed it was possible, but I didn't think it was going to happen. I thought there would be the government would win. I just didn't realize how dangerous what the Ukrainians did, the Germans and Ukrainians, and the way lies that PO did during this whole election campaign about blaming them on immigration. Oh, PI. I mean, the PO government, they argued in the referendum. I mean, there's a whole lot of things here. It's the hypocrisy of their agenda. They were running against immigration, criticizing the government, the current government, for not allowing Africans and people coming into the country, but then criticizing them for being inhumane with the Belarusian border. It was this, and trying to convince their voters not to vote on the referendum, the 4 referendum questions that, which again, the referendum didn't happen because it happened, but they got below 40%. Even though you had the highest voter turnout, most people did not. The argument is half the voters didn't agree to vote in the referendum. So you had a boycott of referendum by the opposition group using the issue of immigration, the outright hypocrisy of the opposition on immigration was just breathtaking, and the voters, just because of their animus towards against PIS and Kaczynski, just didn't pay attention to it or just ignored it. This is like, well, that little reality, I'm going to ignore that because we all know that PIS is racist and PIS is anti-immigration. So therefore, that was a weird thing. So the election was kind of crazy. Polish election politics. Those of you in America know how that is. For me, the videos, I didn't do any videos recording this weekend. I have enough. I have a recording for next week already done. I'll probably do some more recording to try to catch up. I'm not sure if I don't really have the energy. My trip was killing me. I have next week and maybe even like 2 recordings ahead. So I have to just return to book 4 of Social Contract, starting recording the first part of book 4 and Social Contract, and do chapter 2 of start chapter 2 of Schmidt's Dictatorship. The big disaster of Schmidt has been what I thought was going to be easy to manageable is just too big. The chapters, part 1A, I had to break into 2 videos, and part 2B, I got derailed. I thought I was much long. I had to stop it for a second, do some searching of things. I was trying to verify something I was going to say, and then I felt that when I was recording, I got to the point. I've been on for an hour and a half, and that's just too long. Well, I wasn't. It was like under 40 minutes. So then, and then the next video was an hour and a half long, finishing up part 1B. Okay, so I had 2 videos. I had part 1A on Baton on the the Commissariat dictatorship. 2 videos, part one and part 2. I had to give the page numbers to the original book, not to the so I go find the actual page numbers in the book. And then I had the same thing done for part B. So I'll get the videos done in regards to that there like that. The Schmidt stuff is good. Schmidt, as you see, a big B, bug. Woo. We got the door open, so we got the big bug coming in. Oh, the light. Oh no. Schmidt's Dictatorship is a fantastic book for the detail. You see in Schmidt's Dictatorship this real detailed knowledge of the history of law and the history of thinkers, and throughout the history of political, from Middle Ages onwards. The depth of his knowledge of the medieval concepts in the law talks and in the debate of jurisprudence and also political thinking is outstandingly done. And his engagement of all the major secondary literature that deals with these themes, he makes use of the debates at the time he's writing and before in the earlier times. So, I mean, and his whole idea of discovering the old anti-monarchist, the monarchists, the monarcha monks, which is a weird name. It says, oh, you think monarchs, people who defend monarchy? No, people arguing against monarchy. These were the contradicted Tyrannos by Janus Brutus and other books like this. And then Baton being kind of the middleman between, Baton being a middleman between 2 extremes, that and absolutists, right? And then there was this whole idea of then the Bodinian example, then it goes Baton, Grotius, and then Hobbes was dealt with. So that's very interesting. Schmidt stuff there is very worth reading. I mean, that's going to be coming in the thing. So you'll be dealing with this. I'm going to be starting the recording, finishing part A. I think I'm going to have to break it up again, part 1 and part 2. We'll see how it goes. That's it in that sense. I don't want to go too long. My wife's already mad at me. I'm a day late and $1 short with you guys. So therefore, oops, you're seeing this now. And I had just one person pop in. I know one person like it. I didn't expect anyone to be here. I just wanted to make sure that this is an apology for what happened on Friday. I don't like doing this. I was hoping to do it again like I did at my mother's house when I was at, but for some reason her internet was not working. Well, what happened was that she had a new TV, and I think she got her old TV broke, and my wife last time bought her a new TV, and I think that it's a smart TV, and what it's doing is eating up the bandwidth. I don't know why it's beating up the bandwidth. Yes, cable, so we should be using the cable. But no, the stupid smart TV seems to be using her bandwidth up for some reason, and so therefore I couldn't do anything. I couldn't even hook up my my signal, my this I can, and not this, but my other thing, as GSM, I can make it it's for it has media, GSM through internet. It has data transfer. I could actually make a link to kind of use it to go do things. That didn't work either. So it was like everything was this complete disaster yesterday. So I couldn't do a live stream. I was very frustrated and angry about that. So I'll make it up to you guys. I'm making up now in that sense. It's not really a good live stream. I talked about the buns that there's not much else I want to talk about. I have I'm going to put a request for people to send some topics, what they want me to do. I'm going to make a couple of short videos about things. I have been really thinking. I was watching. I don't know. I should talk about this. Okay, I was watching Simon Sinek video. I've always liked Simon Sinek, and because everything Simon said is something I knew in the '90s, studying biosocial politics. So it's not like I went to him to find something I didn't know already, but rather I went to him to find someone who expressed rather effectively for a general audience in a very simple way the ideas of how the mind works, and how about leadership works. I think his book Eaters Eat Last is still a fantastic book. I think, yes, he's a man of the left. He's, in many ways, he's very he's a kind of a more pop. In many ways, he's emotional. He says, in many ways, he's as, he reminds me of Jordan Peterson, how emotional Jordan Peterson gets. Simon Sinek is the same way. There's emotion, this empathy, this radical empathy, this ability, and he understands this empathy opens his ability to understand certain things. And his stories about his times working with the American military and how this shaped him. That's one of the reasons why I like the book, because I'm saying, okay, yes, I thank God some intellectual saw this and understands this. His Leaders Eat Last is a very good book, and his criticism of why businesses, how the military versus business works, that's outstanding in that sense of what he said about the idea that in military, what happens is leadership is you're in life and death situations, and that the leader's goal is to make sure that all the people are empowered to do it, and that you get blamed, but you also get supported when you're needed it. They won't sacrifice you for no good reason, but they're going to sacrifice you to be a good reason. Well, in business, what happens is that, and also people who get rewarded are people who sacrifice and die. We give the people who get medals and awards and things like this are people who had to sacrifice and who had to do something, had to risk their lives and do things for other people, right? This is the idea of heroism and this. But in the business world, how it works is, the people who get rewarded are the people who fire workers, in other words, that you don't fire workers because you need to. You fire them because, you need more profit this quarter. The company's doing all fine. The company's fine and dandy. It's not an existential crisis. But if you don't get good numbers this quarter, that people might leave. People in the financial backers might be disappointed, and might just force a chain at leadership level. So leaders will sacrifice people's work. In other words, say, we're going to cut workforce. So why cutting workforce? Not because there is fundamental. The company's making money, but we got to make more profit so that we can improve our the stock price, so that the rate of return, in other words, and therefore the shareholders will be happy. And at the CIST, he points the difference out to these realities, and it's a very good point there, I think. And then he made another point. The difference between this is the thing that I really liked in one of the videos about his point, and I think I've always argued about this. The difference between investing versus betting. Today, most financial organizations are just betting. What's a bet? A bet is when I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to make a decision of risk. that I'm going to get high payoffs. The situation is not a long-term thing, but rather this, I want to make my benefit on a short-term event and betting how much something will price, and I will bet so that I will get a high rate of return on it. So no long duration, no long curtailment. My interest is immediate and focused on the thing. Betting is just to it's kind of like, it's a gamble. Looking at this, so therefore it's the risk rate of return versus this. Where investing is, you're concerned not with the short term, but the long term, 5, 10, 20 years. So you don't necessarily care if there's loss or negative in this situation, but rather you care for the trend line, how the trend is going. So this, you have something like this. Well, the better bets on this kind of thing, because he's betting on a situation where, okay, this is the way I'm okay. I know it's going to be here. I'm going to buy it here, and I'm going to sell it here before it crosses off here. So I know I get the maximum rate of return from there to there. Where the investor is looking at this and not paying attention to the short-term ups and downs, but rather where the average trend line is towards something. Like he argued, investing is what we do. What investing really is that we stake resources into something or somebody, hoping that they eventually will grow up and produce something valuable. Not tomorrow, not, in other words, it's long term, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, not quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3. So what we have in modern capital markets is no longer really investing. What we have now, because the nature, and this is something I'm going to tie into what's his name? Oh, come on. I know, it's right here. It's right here. James Burnham's Manual Revolution. This is an organizational problem. Burnham is talking organizational. The nature of modern capital follows this, that we don't have real capitalists anymore doing real investments. What we have is managerial capitalism. What is managerial capitalism? Managerial capitalism is that the owning of who really controls capital no longer private individuals, stockholders, but rather they're funds and trusts and organizations that are managed in order to get profit. And it's not on, and these guys must, their whole model is based on betting, short-term accumulation of wealth, so that you get enough wealth that you generate more. In other words, you can get, ironically, if you know this situation, you come up with a model, you can get higher rates of return short-term by churning through different stocks at different cycles. And therefore, you get the maximum rate of return for the benefit of the people you're holding, your fund or your thing. So that the manager, this managed system of organized, calculated gambling, this betting structure of how you're doing it, creates a new situation. And we don't get really shareholders in a traditional sense. Stakeholders. Shareholders, a stakeholder, has a long-term interest in this. The idea of a shareholder was someone who had a stake in the interest of the organization. Therefore, there was a kind of perceived shared mutual interest and loyalty to this. You had a stake in it, right? Well, the problem here is that today's the shareholders are not really shareholders. They're and this is, I'm going to use the term that Simon Sinek used, was squatters. You have I'm betting on a thing, so I'm not going to be a real shareholder. I'm there only for knowing to buy. I'm betting on buying at a low and selling at before the downturn happens. I know there's going to be probably a down, and the market's going to go down, and you're going to have some kind of situation where we are expecting greater returns. We don't get the expectation. In other words, the level of expectations. We look at a company, we see its activities, and we see there's profit, we see there's things, and we expect a certain level of this. And what happens is, we all know that what ends up happening is people often don't. We create. In other words, our expectations, all of a sudden, then reality hits, And therefore we get a situation where, our reality, our expectation versus our reality is different. And therefore what happens is then people go to reality, and therefore, oh my God, the company lost profit. The company was worth this much before, when our expectations was it was our projected expectation, our expected belief. Remember, stock prices are nothing more than the price of a stock at that moment, and that is all about what's people's price they're willing to pay, the highest price you're willing to pay. So what is there, and that is based on two expectations: the expectations of profit versus what I'm willing to pay, what am I willing to risk or pay for the cost, right? The cost benefit of it. So therefore, in this kind of market situation of managers don't own. They're not really owners in that fundamental sense. They're not private persons with that. Their only obligation is their obligation to make as much money for their fund holders. So therefore, they are not obliged to care about the interest. They have no stake in the thing. They're squatters. They're squatters who own stock and whose only goal is to get the max amount of value while they're holding it as much as they can, so that when they're that is going to not return that maximum value, and that I'm going to go to the next stock. I have no loyalty to any stock or share. I will go to the thing that will make me money right now, and I don't care whether I own this or that or that. I don't really care, because it's not my goal to care. My goal is only to make the fund I'm in, the mutual entity, to make as much. Now this makes sense. Or this allows for the accumulation of massive capital to allow big projects. But what this does is it alienates capital from human events. This is what I call the alienization of capital. This is where Marx gets capital wrong. It's not that labor gets alienated. It's that capital itself becomes alienated from human persons. In other words, we don't have the original idea of property and people. The original form of capital was property. Of course, we have labor. Our labor, that's tied to our persons. Our ideas are tied to our persons. It's tied to us as a person. We have an idea, some concept we want to shape. This is like this idea that we take an idea and then it becomes transformed into something that is fungible, that can make money, or to make something that can make money, right? I labor, I produce something, I make something. That's my labor. It's tied to a person. Property, it's property, the land, the land or the resources that is yours, that capital. It's tied to a person who owns the property, right? And the medieval conception of that is that the medieval person that is tied to the ownership of that individual. So therefore, this radical conception here of what capital is, and of course we have to understand that property, we have to understand human evolution, anthropology, that we only, human beings at first, property in terms of land only becomes a thing because of agricultural society. We move from, pastoral population, hunter-gatherers you don't carry land, you move, okay? You may have animals and things here. You have troop over lies, new subscriber high. Again, you got the wrong day, but I'm glad I could find someone. That you had hunter-gatherers, tribal peoples. They don't have territory. They don't sit down and they follow the animals that they're hunting, and they'll gather wherever they're going. They can't just gather. They're not cultivating there if they're just gathering the resources of the earth. Pastoral people who herd animals and then herd them and start managing them. They still have to move because they don't. Until agricultural society emerges, pastoral agricultural society emerges, you have to move to get food, because once you don't cultivate the earth to produce new food, you have to wait for the seasons to go. And if you eat all the things here, you have to go to another place. And the animals will eat the grass, eat the food. So therefore, you have to move the animals around to get new food until it runs out. So therefore, you don't get territory, you don't get land as capital until the agricultural society. Whereas with agricultural society, you get territorial entity, private property, in this fundamental sense. Now, with private property, you have nations. This is the political comes in. This is why the change between tribal societies and political societies is that you have agricultural societies that are centered and located. The land and the people become one. Capital and the people become one. So the nature of capital was always human, tied to human. It was at first our labor, our hunting, our activities, our thought processes, and then later our manipulation of the physical world, either in terms of farming or then later production, crafts, arts and crafts and productions. This still becomes a very important aspect of capital. Now, Marx gets this whole idea about alienation of capital. This is just bad. This is because of Locke saying what he says about property being like this, being a natural construction, and therefore value is what labor theory of value, that the value of a thing is based upon the labor put into it. Now, he does that as a kind of justification to why people have a natural right to property. Now, it is this fallacy of a labor theory of value. And Locke does this purposely. I've always argued Locke is doing this because he needs this to give an alternative and more Hobbesian friendly version of why property is something unalienable. Right now, people need property and something that's humans have an unalienable right to have. That does not come from the older Christian understanding of the idea of that person and properties are tied together. That is essential. In other words, there is this already in England, the idea of English common law ties to individuals and property together in a kind of medieval conception of the body. The body, your physical land that your life and your sustenance comes from is as much as belongs to you and is part of you as your body is. So this idea of the king's two bodies concept. That the king has two bodies, his physical body and his territorial body. Well, any landlord does, any real holder of land or baron or landlord. This is why to touch on property is to touch on their person. This is why to trespass is to assault you. This is why you could kill people for trespassing your property. This is in a way thus America's trespass laws are really goes back to the earliest of Judeo-Christian conceptions of the connection between land and our person. So therefore, this is, and that Locke could not challenge that, could not just make property the arbitrary act of the state, arbitrary act of the ruler. So unlike Hobbes and unlike Rousseau in that sense. In doing that, Locke needed a new myth, and that myth was, my labor does it. My value of the property comes with my labor, and that's it's part to my person for my labor. Now, Smith kind of talks about this. Smith, labor theory. Smith is like yes and no. Hobbes would laugh. Hobbes, if he was alive when Locke said this, he would have mocked it, saying, because why? What is the value of anything is the agreed contract. All justice is achieved through the agreement of consent. So therefore, the value, what makes the value of a thing is is the agreement that once we set upon it, whatever the network of which we agree to is that value. So therefore, the trade, the value of a good is determined by the parties involved coming to an agreement on what is right, and that is the only thing that determines the justice of price. So therefore, in other words, the agreement of the parties in question determines the validity of what is just price. Thus, there's no just price. There's no objective price. There's no objective value of anything. All value is subjective to the perspectives of the actors involved in the discussion. Thus, the labor theory of value was a trick, con job, a rhetorical con job to make a Hobbesian model appear more compatible with Christian thinking. This is all what Locke really ultimately is. But then what happened was David Ricardo takes this, and Marx goes right from David Ricardo. David Ricardo's synthesization of Smith and then taking labor theory of value and running with it. Because this idea we have objective value with labor theory of value. But then with this, Ricardo's handling of this, you get the problem of Marx, who says, well, there's objective value, then there's X surplus value. And once there's surplus value, that's unjust, and that workers are being cheated, and therefore they're being alienated from the labor. So therefore, if you say that no, there's no such thing as objective labor, that labor, the value does not emerge out of labor, but value is determined by what the parties think is right. It's subjective, and that only because that exchange or agreement, just exchange and agreement, is when both parties agree to it, and as long as there's no coercion or fraud involved, then it's just. That is the theory of contract, and this is why the Austrians are better on this point than Ricardo, in that sense. This is the flawlessy of Ricardo. Now, okay, people are going to say, well, what the hell does that do with your point about Sinek's point about sharecroppers? Was it? I said not shareholders, but what is it? The squatters, share squatters. Well, what is wrong with this? And well, share squatters there's no commitment. That investors have a long-term commitment to the organization. You have a connection to the community, to the group, to its interest, and you share the same interests. You have an interest with this, and therefore you're investing. Yes, it gives you some utility, but it also ensures goods and things that the collective needs to benefit from in order for it to be able to benefit and to grow. So the problem with the managerial model that comes into modern capitalism is that capital itself becomes, we lose our connection. Human communities, in other words, capital no longer serves the people, or we're alienated from it. It's been like bureaucracy. Bureaucracy is another way. In other words, we don't have government that's directly accountable. We have a set of managers who have been appointed, who are not accountable to the people directly, who are appointed by the people represented may do it, or maybe even third parties may put these people in power. The rise of administration, right? Administration is the replacement for politics. This is what Hobbes is all about. We remove political contestation with administration. We have a state, and the estate would have representative agents who are agents of administering the body. And there's going to be the two different agencies. There's going to be the legislative entity and the executive. And the executive are going to have mid-level people, the administrators. These are going to be the bureaucrats who are going to be implementing policy, and they're going to be implementing, and the lawyers too are going to be implementing the legal aspects of this, are going to be part of this kind of from this executive judicial aspect. They're going to be magistrates who are going to be imposing decisions and clerks and rules that the legislature will come up to. This is something that when we read the Schmidt about the legislative state, this is how this is going to work. And the idea of the connection of the legislative state with the idea of a decree, right, tied to this law versus decree. Administration is from decree, and therefore this is what happens when all of a sudden when the blurring of administration and decree become the same level, as Schmidt says, in the Weimar system and the modern idea of progressive state. Then what happens is that law and a decree is the same. Therefore, administration replaces legislation representation. And therefore, what you have is an administrative system, right? This is the administrative. Now, if that is happening at the political level, look at what happens at the economic level. If you see the rise of administrative state in that sense, that's the political dimension. The economic dimension is the rise of managerial capitalism. And that is that it's no longer the entrepreneur or the individual shareholder or the individual shareholder who owns significant stock. Rather, the majority of shareholders are funds, mutual funds, pension plans, group funds, investment groups, who are managing stock. They buy all the stock, and they're not loyal to anything. They're only going to be there as long as they know the cycle of this. What is the cycle? When can I sell this to get it at the best price? Just when the price looks good and they know people will want it, I will sell it to get the maximum benefit and then go find another cheap stock that I can then hope I can rise the price up, and then when it comes up, when before it gets its utility price, the price will rise, and its benefit utility is going to continue until you know a certain point where it's the expectation. The expectation is higher than the reality, and you see that point where you can push it and then sell it before the reality hits, and the market then has a decrease in price and panic shirts. This is the thing about ups and downs. That a lot of times the value is a good stock, but the perception, the opinion of everyone is that it's crap. The short sellers, right? The short sellers who spread the rumors that I'm going to bet on that. The short sellers are purposefully creating a reality, which then creates the market reflects it, but people's perceptions of this. Remember, the market is nothing more than people's opinions. It's all about doxa. It's all about it's the realm of belief and the realm of opinion. So if you're playing the market, what you're doing is you're not really basing it. You're investing. You look at the company assets. You look at the company assets. You look at that rate of return, and you look at long-term projections and see if the projections have made it. And then you'd have your long-term agenda. And you stay with the company. You're making a return. It's nice, safe, and return. You'll get your safe return. You'll get a safe thing. But if you want to make lots of money, no. If I'm going to get lots, I'm going to gamble. I'm going to bet. So therefore, the nature of this is systemic, organized betting, so that what happens is you maximize your rate of return, and you have no loyalty to a stock or an entity. The second you think the stock is at that, the expectation, the value of the stock is expectation versus reality is not good enough. In other words, you can do that. You can sell it. In other words, this is the famous, Other People's Money, the movie Other People's Money, or the play Other People's Money, was the character of Gordon Gekko, or not Other People, but I forget the character, Dan DeVito character name, who looked at a company, said this company it's more valuable if I sell the stuff off. Selling the stuff off is worth more than the company itself. The other things the company does, but the main business, this cable division, it's losing money, and the other profitable things are making money, but they're paying. They will be more profitable, and this thing is not profitable. In fact, it's more. If you sold off the assets and shut down the things and sold it off, it's worth more, chopped up than it is that. And the other company separated from that would be a very profitable company. Okay, there is logic. There is a logic to what they're doing. The problem here is the idea of the tying to this. Who's doing this? It's not that the owners themselves do it. See, if the owners themselves if the owners and the shareholders all agreed that this was, and they were simply not institutional investors, but people, they're friends of his. And they agree. This is the idea of why is it okay for Scrooge to change his opinion and be generous at the end of a Christmas Carol. Scrooge is the owner. He's not the manager. If Scrooge was the manager and he did what he did, he'd be stealing money. He'd be misappropriating funds. He would be taking other people's money, and it would be malappropriation of stock funds, the business's funds. But if it's his money, his firm, his entity, he's the owner of this, then he can be generous to. If he wants to be generous to his worker, that's his right to be generous to his worker. Oh, but he's not efficient. Well, doesn't make it. As long as he's in business and he's willing to change that, that is his right to do so. In other words, the owner can. But a manager does not have that discretion. A manager cannot care about the workers. The workers are only an equation that has to be, if it gets away in that quarterly profit, you kill the worker. And therefore we do. You destroy people's working loyalties. You want to understand why Generation Z, millennials and Zers are so not don't want to work and rather do this, and well, they saw what happened to their parents. Anyone who grew up in the 90s and thousands, even in the 80s, they saw what happened to even the Xers caught the first edge. Xers were the ones who just got learned a lesson that their life, their world was not going to be as good as their father's, parents' world, boomers. That things were not going to be as open to them. They saw their families get wiped out by divorce. They saw not only that, they saw their parents lose their jobs, and it became worse with millennials. Millennials saw that their parents were losing jobs, do no fault. They weren't at fault. The company was still making money, but the company sacrificed mom and dad's job in order to make more money. Okay, therefore they grew up seeing that companies don't care for you. So if they have no loyalty to you, why should you have any loyalty to them? Okay, this is Simon Sinek's talk about this. I think he's absolutely right. And I'm going to end here. This is my hour. At an hour, and this is the theme I want to talk about in that sense. This is why we want to talk about managerial revolution, right? People say how brilliant that was. It is, but and we have to understand the economic dimension. I think he sees the political dimension of this. He doesn't really address the economic dimension of we go from shareholder capitalism to managerial capitalism, and the shareholders are stakeholders who have a stake in the industry, and they have a long-term interest in the industry because the industry has a long-term benefit and connection to a community. But once you radically do this in a neo-global world where there's nothing that the entity or the business has no tie to a given community that can serve anyone, and that therefore there's no loyalty to work. In other words, the goal of management is to maximize profit at all costs, and that workers are just a cost. Labor is just one cost factor that you just take into consideration and it's a question of cost benefit, how much utility versus cost benefit. And this there's no concern about people. They're no longer, Marx is right about the commoditization of life, but this is not the problem. The problem is that this is a commoditization of life only happens because the manager is lost. The manager has no tie to community. He only has tied to his obligation as manager, and that is to maximize utility benefit to his wards, the people who are in. He has to make sure that the fund gets enough money because he's going to get paid based on what? Performance. His performance pay is based upon how much money he generates, in that sense, the profit. So he'll get a bonus based upon his generation. He fires people, that's great. If he fires people, and at the end of the day, they make their targets, they hit their targets because he's fired people, he'll be rewarded because he did what he's supposed to do. He is supposed to hit his targets, quarterly targets. Meets the quarterly targets, that's more important than whether keeping the workers loyal. And that's why you have that whole point that this is the difference of the two systems. And this is why I think you have to understand the political dimension of economics in this regard. And this is not socialism. This is not socialism, because the socialist idea is that we can manage this. We can't manage this. Socialism is just another managerial form. In other words, the socialism is managers, but they're managers hired by the political class. And what the political class will do is their own political advantage. And usually their political advantage is the expense of other people. So you have socialism, but socialism only makes things worse. In fact, this is what's the problem with the neoliberal system versus the socialist system. They're both managerial models, but one is going to be more effective than the other. So this will produce wealth and generation, but it will be unequal and like this. This won't do that. It will produce inequality also, but the inequality will be a completely different type of inequality, and it will be tied with inefficiency and bad outcomes. So you have this is what happens. Why socialism ultimately will fail, not because of they're both managerial by their character. The workers will never work. The idea that workers are going to own the means of production, come on. Moscow and elite theory shows they will tell you that's not going to happen. Why? Because you can never have open massive participation. This idea that the same political problem at the political level, mass scale society will always lead to elites. The larger the society, the larger structure, you can't have, so therefore, larger as the economic model grows so big, you can't have everyone's equal participation in the model. You can only have localized participation, and therefore that means market, I can buy and sell, I can opt into it, I can contract. But if you're going to have a large network system, you're going to have no way that the workers can coordinate and be able to operate and manage. In other words, you have to have managers. You'd have to have managers. And once you get managers, you get the problem of elite. You get the Moscow problem, the law of oligarchy. So you can't, this is something that Dallas, the Hungarian writer, Michael Dallas, I can't never say his right name, the New Class. He was a Yugoslavian writer who talked about Tito's and talked about the book called The New Class, about the role of the nomenklatura. Therefore, you can't escape class in Russia, the communist system. In other words, that in the dictatorship of the proletariat, what ended up happening was the nomenklatura came into place and they became the new class. So you had the workers in the nomenklatura, the vanguard, who becomes the new elite. So you didn't get the end of history, you got a new class, a new managerial class. This managerial class emerges in that sense. So, in many ways, the book, The New Class, very much echoes, should be read with Burnham's The Managerial Revolution in that sense, because the idea is that this is, would argue that even in Soviet states, you're going to socialism, you would get a new class because the political elites in the vanguard of the party, whoever the elites running the parties and running the managers who are managing the state systems they're going to appoint managers. They're never going to be workers' democracy. Even if there is worker democracy, then you would have as representative systems that therefore you get the Soviets, who then what happened? You'd have the Soviet system. The local Soviets, well, then they do is, well, they elected delegate officials who then become what? Part of they become the new, they become the nomenklatura, right? They become the new party elite, the new elite that becomes. So again, iron law. This is why you can't escape by Nikol's and Moska's conception of in a large system. The larger the system, the more inevitably elite control will emerge. Therefore, in mass society, you cannot escape. The only way you can present massive elite control is by having smaller, diverse societies who are kind of conjoined, and therefore political life is localized in that sense. And this is the political question, and this is also true at the economic level. So that is the nature of this. Is why you have to have markets. You have the bigger markets. What's going to happen is that you have the global economy. Then okay, it's great. The global economy is going to work because that's going to be a market. That's all it is. A global economy is just a market, the price of exchange. The problem with this is that you need mechanisms of regulation to prevent fraud, make sure contracts are promised, make sure people are keeping their words and things, and therefore law and norms and things like this need to happen. The state was necessary to do that. The state helped. This is what allowed the market. This is allowed to do it. Now, what happened was the systems of states together created an international regime order that allowed, or either a hegemon or a system of states. It used to be hegemon. A hegemon, a power that was hegemonic, allowed a market they would police the market and allow the market to help them. Okay, this mutual relationship. Again, see Hannah Arendt about the connection of this. Hannah Arendt, her theory, her Origins of Totalitarianism is an outstanding book on this. Well, I'm way over. I was going to only do 45 minutes today. We did this. You can see this. If you have any comments or questions, please put them below. Please tell me what you were interested in, and we can talk about this. I'll do some more. Maybe you say I want more people to talk about this. I'll do this. The other thing I need to do is I have to do my own work. I have some writing to do. I need to go do that too. I start recording. So if you like it, put some questions on there, put some comments, put some things you didn't like, need to talk about on this, maybe, or some other new topic in this situation. If you not like it, you can say that, say come down, but say why. We have only had about 3 or 4 people coming, but 2 people liked it. What else can I say? You can subscribe if you're not. Please if you've seen this and like it, subscribe. We had a new subscriber there. Just there, maybe disappeared right afterwards. Then what you need to do is you need to then look at my social media links below. You can also look at my academic social media to see what I do as a scholar. And then you want to help me do it, you can become a Subscribe Star member, a Patreon member. Okay, if maybe not, but please, it would be help. Every little bit helps. Or you can buy one of my books that listed below. Okay, on that, take care. Bye-bye. Have a good day. See you.